Communications in the 21st century requires a totally different understanding. So I've got a question I want to ask you. How many among you are considered as young people? Raise up your hand. Put your hand down. You don't qualify. There you go. Let me put it this way. How many among you were born in the years 1980 to 2000? Taas ang kamay. There you go. These are now called the Generation Y. How many among you were born between 1960 and 1980? Taas ang kamay. Those are called the Generation X. How many among you were born between 1945 and 1960? Taas ang kamay. Kukunti na lang kami rito. These are called the baby boomers, right? Now, ibang-iba po ang communications now. I'm going to talk very briefly about certain things. I have 3 kids. All of them come from the same source. I can assure you. If there's one thing I notice among all 3, the one thing they all have in common is that they are all different. Does that make sense to you? Next question. How many among you have kids? Taas ang kamay. Good. Do they all come from the same source? Yes. Are they individually different too? So here's my question. By virtue of my position as daddy, do I expect all of them to adjust to me, or do I have to take the necessary effort to adjust to each one individually? What do you think? First one or the second one? And yet many parents do not understand that they are made up differently. So very, very quickly now, we don't have much time. And I want to thank, teka muna. Are you happy that CCF is doing this for you? I mean, $200, diba? So, would you like to show, sino yung mga taga-CCF dito? Taas ang kamay. Ayan. So, for those of you who are non-CCF, let me see the hands. Okay. Dami rin, ha? So, are you happy, guys, that CCF has offered this for you? Are you? Would you like to show your appreciation to our friends from CCF for making this very affordable? Nice music. So here's the key. I'd like to find out how many among you have read that book, The 5 Love Languages. Sino? If you are from CCF, that's SOP, that's standard. Everybody knows that. So let me rephrase my question. How many among you have not yet come across that book, The 5 Love Languages? Okay, good. So let me explain very, very quickly. People express love in different methodologies and expressions. In other words, when people want to show love, they show it in different methodologies and ways. Me, for example, my dominant love language happens to be touch. Hugs, kisses, embraces. Question, how many among you, that's your primary love language? Touch. Taas ang kamay. There you go. You know, my son is 31 years old. His waistline is probably 1.5 size bigger than mine. 8 years ago, he went into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He took up ultimate fighting. He went into boxing. When he went into martial arts, I decided to be kinder with him. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes in the house, when he is busy doing his computer before he moved out on his own, I would come and give him a bear hug. I would tussle his hair, tickle him. What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm expressing my love. And then he will pretend as if I'm overwhelming. I mean, he would say, Daddy, wag na. I mean, he can throw me away anytime. One of the reasons why I'm doing that, it is simply because of this. I lost my father 2 years ago. I loved him dearly and he loves me. But I can never remember a moment in our lives when we embraced. Never. Why? Chinese people are not very expressive. But the more I say this in my seminars, the more I realize this has got nothing to do with being Chinese. Let me see a show of hands in this place. How many among you have never experienced the embrace of your father? Taas ang kamay. I rest my case. We have a problem now. I mean, our kids see us doing beso-beso with people we hardly know, and then when it comes to them, we don't express our love and feelings. That's going to be a casualty. Fathers, can I see the hands of the fathers here in this place? Good. Next question. How many among you are fathers with daughters? Taas ang kamay. I would like to make a suggestion. Kahit maliit pa, when my daughters were little, I would embrace them. Until today, I still embrace them. We are OA. We are overacting. Even right now in the house, we will come out of our rooms, we'll meet each other, we'll embrace, and then I go to the bathroom, and then when she comes out, I meet her again, we'll embrace again. And every time I would embrace my daughters when they were little, I will always tell them, sweetheart, I hope that one day you'll get to meet a man who loves you and respects you the same way your daddy does. You know what I'm doing? I'm setting up benchmarks, right? Fathers, I have a very important request. You gotta embrace your daughters. You can be poker face in doing business, but when you bring your poker face into your relationship with your kids, that's not gonna work. And if you don't embrace your daughters, one day somebody else will. And that's going to be very, very dangerous, right? We heard Pastor Peter talk about relationships. We talk about everything. These are the basics, expressions of relationship. Next, some people communicate love or express love through talk, words of affirmation. These are people, whenever they want to express their love, they say it. I love you. I need you. You're important to me. How many among you, yan ang primary love expression nyo? Taas ang kamay. Good. Now, I only have one son. If my son does not get married and produce a male offspring, the family name Kong is done. That's why my son is literally the last of the Mohicong. And I press him too hard. I mean, people pay me high, companies get my services to upgrade and update their skills, and then when my son doesn't show good performance, nakakahiya, hindi pwede yan. That was so selfish of me. I was thinking about myself. And so when he comes and he'll show me his report card, and then I'll say, you could have done better. Ikaw kasi drums ka ng drums eh. The more I do that, the more he fails. Buti na lang, my wife drew me aside and then she said, don't you understand? Your son's love language is talk. When I realized that, I said, napaka-bobo ka talaga, napaka-bobo. I changed my strategy. Every time he shows me grades, kahit napasang awa, oh, that's good. Mahirap yung course mo eh. Hirap. Pag wala na siya, tsaka ako magngingit-ngit, di ba? The more I encourage him, the better he performs. Next, some people communicate love through time. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything. I just want you to be there because for me, that's love. How many among you in the primary love language nyo? Taas ang kamay. Good. Hey guys, do you know that I teach this in my leadership seminars? It's the same principle that you bring to the workplace and at home. Next. Some people communicate love through things. These are people, when they want to express their affection, they buy chocolate and flowers, they write those tiny little notes, they always want to give gifts. It doesn't have to be expensive, mga Chanel, Louboutin, Birkenbag from Green Hills, pwede na. How many among you yung primary love language no? Things. Nasa kamay. Good. Now, some people communicate love through tasks, works of service. Dito, nakakatuwa. Pagdating dito, alas 4 kami mag-asawa. Our kids will say, look at Daddy and Mommy. Once they hit the mall, Daddy goes straight to the clothes shop. These are the favorite clothes shop of mine in the malls, in Rockwell, so forth and so on. My wife naman, dire-diretso yan sa True Value Ace Hardware. Yung mga ganon. When I see a piece of clothing, I'll say, wow, that's beautiful. That's the winter collection. I'm gonna buy me the complete assortment of colors. My wife naman, wow, ang ganda ng drill. Black & Decker, grabe, di ba? There was a time when she wanted to buy an electric saw. I prevented her. Marami akong napanood na horror movies, yung asawa pinapatay, di ba? So, when I'm working during the rainy days, and there's problems in the ceiling, I would say, sweetheart, parang may problema ang kesame. Mami, ako, what is she doing? What is she doing? She's expressing her love. Kaya naman pala, even when I go abroad and then I'll buy her some expensive gifts and I'll say, sweetheart, I have a surprise for you. Ano na naman yan? And then when I show her my surprise, you say, gumastos ka na naman. Binilan mo na nga, galit pa. Ilocana eh. That's not her love language, right? Kaya naman pala, when I wake up in the morning, and then before she wakes up, I'll mix her some wheatgrass. I'll bring coffee for her. When she sees me doing that, she'll say, I love you. Mas mura nga yan eh. Is this helpful for you? Here's my question now. First, do you know the love language of your spouse? By the way, spies is not the plural for spouse. How many among are with your spouse now? Taas ang kamay. Okay, do you know the love language of your partner? Next question, going back to our topic for the day. Do you know the love languages of your kids? There is no one formula that you can apply to all of your kids. They're individually different, aren't they? That's the reason why we need to learn. Communications in the 21st century is entirely different now. If you were born before 1960, our thoughts were linear. In other words, we base our thoughts on text. I don't mean SMS. What I mean is books. We read from left to right and left to right, with the exception of Chinese, of course. Now, if you were born in Gen X, especially the Gen Y, their thoughts are not linear. Their thoughts are in loops. They can click on to one website and then click on the blue line that immediately brings them to a totally different environment called the hyperlink. And that's the reason why here are some ideas. Number one, they don't want long-winded, unending sermons. Do you guys know that every time I talk to young kids, I'll ask them this provoking question. It is not true that we hate our parents' sermons. And then they'll look at me in a strange way as if saying, where does this Jurassic creature come from? And then I'll repeat, it is not true that we don't like our parents' sermons. What we don't like are their repeated sermons. And they all say, yeah. And so I realized that. These are just some simple tips I want to share with you. How many among you are in business? Taas ang kamay. How many among you own your own businesses? Taas ang kamay. How many among you work for the private company? Taas ang kamay. How many among you are professionals? Doctors, lawyers, gambling lord, waiting lord? Here's the key. Understand the power of an economy of words. I applied a very, very effective way of condensing and minimizing words into slogans. For example, when Hannah reached age 15 and 16, kinabahan ako ng konti. I began entertaining mysterious phone calls in the house. Yung bang, kring! Hello? 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 Ayaw. Kring! Hello? Ayaw. Pero if she's the one who answers it, their conversation will take long. Naku, ninervyos na ako. And so I sat her down And I said, sweetheart, remember the 7 Bs. This phrase has become so popular even in schools because I've been doing this for so long. What are the 7 Bs? The 7 Bs stand for, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? 7B stands for books before boys, because boys bring babies. Make sense? You know what? When I presented this in UST, somebody wrote me back in Facebook, sabi na, sir, I love the 7Bs for girls. Do you know that there's also a 7Bs for boys? Sabi ko, what's that? Eto na. Books before babes, because babes bring bankruptcy. Tama. Totoo ah. Next, let me share with you another tip. If I can relive my life again, I would spend more time spending time being together, bonding with my son when he reaches the age of 12 and 13. Crucial pala yung 12 and 13. At age 12 and 13, they want to establish their identity. They look for older people. They mimic, they copy, they imitate. And if the father is not there, they're going to be imitating somebody else. So this is just one thing that I did. I made sure that there should be one day exclusively for my son. I call him Brian Daddy Day. One day lang, just me and my son. Don't bring your wife along with you. Pampasira ng diskarte yan. Doon ka lang. And then I told my son, today will be a very special day for you. It's Daddy Brian Day. And then he says, bakit? There's something I notice about kids. When they're little, they're so talkative, aren't they? As they grow up, they're still talkative with their friends, but their conversation with their parents diminish. Did you notice that? I noticed that when they're growing, their conversations now are limited to a few phrases. Phrase number 1, okay lang. Diba? When he comes home, I want to engage him in meaningful conversation. How's your school? How's dinlukban? How's your course? Okay lang. Diba? The next phrase is, bakit? Diba? And then, they added something more. Lalang. Baka ako, bago to, lalang. Diba? Kumusta na? Lalang. Diba? That's why when they said, Dad, penging allowance, lalang. Diba? And so what happened was this. I brought him. And then at that time, I brought him to a place called, this is across Landmark in Makati, where there was an old place called Sugar House. I don't know if you remember that place. Those people who remember, makabatch kami. Makabatch. And then I told the waiter, I said, waiter, please lang ha, tagalan mo yung service. I mean, excuse me? Hindi, tagalan mo. Most people would say, bilisan mo ako tagalan, kasi may agenda ako eh. And then I told my son, today will be a special day for just you and me. Bakit? Sabi ko, hindi, bonding tayo. Bakit? Bonding nga eh, bonding, di ba? And so we went there. Habang kumakain, I asked him this question. Do you play basketball? My son does not play basketball. He used to play soccer when he was in Xavier. He said, oh naman, bakit? Sabi ko, alam mo sa basketball, when you stay too long in the shaded area, there's a violation called against you. What's that violation called? 3 seconds. Sabi na, bakit? Sabi ko, you know, son, in life pala, meron din tinatawag na 3-second rule. What's that? Sabi ko, ganito yan. When your friends begin saying, come on, man, let's steal it. No one would know. Let's do it. Come on, let's rape her. Come on, let's do this, let's do that. Nobody knows. All it takes is 3 seconds for you to make one crucial decision that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. When you say, sige na nga, I'll do it. That's just 3 seconds. And then I equated those days with the Visconde massacre. Do you remember that one? I said, those bright young guys did not plan to commit crime, but all they did was those 3 crucial 3 seconds when they said, sige na nga, sama ako dyan. So the next time he wants to go out, the next time he wants to go somewhere, I don't have to give him a long sermon and start with everything else. I'll just say, son, you're going out? Yeah. and he gets it. All right? Another thing I want to share with you now is this. How many among you would want to wish that your children one day will help you in your business and take over? Taas sa kamay. Uh-huh. How many among you notice that kids don't want to work for their parents? Taas sa kamay. There's a reason why. You see, when my son was 3 years old, I asked him this question. Let me ask you this question. How many among you have asked this question at least once in your lifetime? Anak, what would you like to be when you grow up? Taas ang kamay. So I asked him this question. I've always wished that he would one day become a business person like me. So I was hoping he would say, I said, son, I think when he was about 4-year-old, 5-year-old, when you grow up, would you like to be a business person like your dad? And he says, broke my heart. I said, why? Sabi ko, what do you want to be when you grow up? Sabi na, Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a policeman. Sabi ko, policeman, teka muna. Rule number 1, do not degrade any profession. And then I balanced it, and then I said, that's good. Society cannot have peace and order without policemen, but you be an honest one, all right? And he says, yes. But deep in my heart, I was disappointed. Ako, police? Well, that's okay, he's young. 3 years later, I asked him the same question. Anak, when you grow up, you still want to be a policeman? He said, no. Uy, nabuhayan ako ng loob. So what would you like to be? Bombero? Naku, bombero. Again, I said, firefighters in America are the most respected profession, pero huwag kang magnakaw, be an honest one. Relax ka lang. Age 13, 14, that's crucial. I brought him with me to a business trip. This is what I said. Son, doing business is fun. Man, you'll be learning from a lot of people. Like, for instance, we're going to be facing the Japanese and the Indonesians and the Chinese and the Singaporeans. The Japanese people, they're fun people. They're very polite. But the number one problem of your dad is your dad doesn't know who between the two of us will stop bowing, you know? And the Singaporeans, they're very musical people. All of their sentences end with the musical note, la. And then, you know, he went there with anticipation. And then when we went there, I was telling him, this is so fun to do business. Now, you got to understand one thing. I came from the garments industry. And my kids, that market was my market. When my suppliers would show me fabrics, I would say, son, this is a good idea. What do you think? I involved him. And you'll be surprised. When I gave him an involvement, he feels so confident, and many of his opinions are really realistic and applicable. That was the crucial turning point that convinced him to be a business person one day. But there's another side benefit. My son and I, we wrote a book together. He defended his views, I defended my views. That book is entitled, Why Don't You Grow Up, Dad? In that book, there's a revelation. He says, when I went on my business trip with my dad, I noticed that everybody had hard drinks on the table except my dad and I. We were the only ones drinking fresh orange juice. And what he noticed was this. Even though I did not do the things they were doing, these people still showed me respect. How does that apply? He says, in our school, you don't have to buy ecstasy. All you need to do is to ask for them. But I can tell myself with this assurance that I don't have to do the same things they're doing, and I will still be respected. Did you notice one thing? I brought him there to teach him how to do business, but he was learning something else apart from my main objective. This was what Pastor Peters was saying. Our modeling is more effective than our speaking. Why are you so quiet? Raise up your right hand. I don't like that. Raise up your right hand. Tap the shoulder, person to your right. Look at that person and say, you gotta be a good example. Raise up your left hand. Tap the shoulder, person to your left. Look at that person and say, speak for yourself. When my dad tried to train me. He was a good accountant, but he could never be Chinese citizen, and so forever he became a bookkeeper. And he wanted me to grow up to become not only a successful accountant, but somebody who will rival the business of a sisib Gores Belayo. And that's why when I was 6 years old, he began bringing me to Escolta. Do you remember that place? Because that's where the BIR headquarters were. And so while we were walking together, he will begin his script by saying, "Now that you're traveling with me, ngayong magkasama tayo, malalaman mo na ang hirap maghanap buhay. Ang laki ng sacrifice ko. Kung sino-sinong mga taong hindi mo type ang makikilala mo. Napakahirap itong profession na to. Nagpapakamartir ako para sa atin. Kaya paglaki mo, gusto kong maging katulad mo ako." You know, at the back of my mind, I was telling myself, when I grow up, I will be anything, but I refuse to be an accountant like you because masyado kang mukhang pasas. Do you understand what I mean? And so, it turned me off. Let me tell you why a lot of Chinese businesses do not work and their children are not following their footsteps. Kasi, bata pa, ganun lang turo. Anak, mag-aral ka. I need to teach you. Dad, laro ako. Ano laro? Wala tao tindahan. Bantay. Bantay. Kotiam. Habang lumalaki, Dad, basketball. 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 Bantay. Wala tao. Yan. Dad, habang lumalaki, field trip ako. Ano field trip? Field trip. Wala na nga magbabantay ng negosyo. Kaya, bantay. Diba? And so, habang lumalaki, the father noticed that the kid is getting mad. And so he brings in his best sales speech. He said, "Don't you understand what I'm doing? Huh? The reason why I'm doing this to you is that one day, all of this will be..." Tagalogin natin. Kaya ko ginagawa sa iyo, di mo pa naintindihan? Pagdating ng araw, lahat nito ay para sa iyo. Ang ibig sabihin niya, kung patay na siya, kung mahaba buhay niya. Para siyang Prince Charles, ayaw mamatay, yung nanay, di ba? In the first place, work is not fun. Oh man, if you will only discover the power of fun, trust, love, joy, peace, exactly what Pastor Peter was saying, that you find the fruit of the Spirit operating in your life, that's an entirely different story. Are you okay with this? Oh, don't forget, I really don't care how successful your business is, especially for SMEs. Success without succession is failure. So, on another note, God may have other plans for them. This is the reason why the first thing I do is I want my children to work outside the home. Let them gain experience. And if they like it, if their giftings is from God, then they will help me out in business. If not, their dreams and aspirations may be even bigger. Why? God has His own unique plan for him. Does that make sense to you? Iba-iba ang giftings eh. My son is not me. The worst thing that we can do is to project our frustrated dreams upon them and then make their lives miserable. I'm going to end by simply saying this. You know what I've learned? I've learned that every moment should be converted into milestones. Every milestone should become memories. Moments, milestones, memories. Why? The tragic thing is that we grow old fast, they grow up fast, and there are no pleasant memories of time spent well together with their parents. And so I pondered on this, and I said, wow, we have very limited time, don't we, in this planet? My time is up. One day, your time will be up too. But the question now is, have we really invested time making it such a fulfilling experience of having good kids who emulate their good parents? Mamaya, I'm going to show you a film. Would you like me to show you a film? This one resonates with me because my son is a musician. I want you to watch this film, and after this, I'm going to come back, say a little bit more, and then we'll call it a day. Let's watch this film.
ผมอยากมีเวลามากกว่านี้ เวลาที่จะบอกลูกผมว่า ผมรักเขามากที่สุดในโลก
ลุกขึ้นมาลุกเหยียบนิดเดียวเราลูกผู้ชายน่ะ
อยากใช้เวลาเข้าใจเขามากกว่านี้
โกหกชัดๆฉันเห็นแกไปมั่วสุมดนตรีอะนั่นแหละบ้านเพื่อน
อยากฟังในสิ่งที่เขาอยากพูด
แน่แล้วใช่ไหมออกไป
อยากคุย อยากฟังเพลงของเขา อยากขอโทษ ก็อย่างที่ผมบอก ผมอยากมีเวลามากกว่านี้ เวลาที่จะได้ทำในสิ่งที่ผมยังไม่ได้ทำ เวลาที่จะรัก และดูแลเขามากกว่านี้
The last part was omitted because it's written in Thai. But that's the most meaningful part. It says Thai Insurance Company. But the message is very real, isn't it? Huh? Guys, look. I told my kids, God can take me anytime. I may not have much to leave behind, but watch this. I have 3 kids. Let's say, I don't have this, but let's suppose. Once my time is done, and I leave them, each one with 50 million pesos. I don't know what they're going to do with the money. They can grow the money, they can burn the money, they can invest in it, they can lose it. I don't know. That's an inheritance, isn't it? If it's time for me to go, maybe I can leave them with a couple of units of my residences, maybe a couple of my investments in certain condo units. I don't know what they're going to do with it. Maybe they'll sell it, maybe they'll rent it, maybe they'll burn them down. I don't know. That's still an inheritance, isn't it? If I'm gone and I leave them with my businesses and they take over, I don't know what they're going to do with it. They may grow it, they may expand it, they may run it to the ground, make it grow belly up, go south. I don't know. That's an inheritance. I don't want to leave them, my kids, with an inheritance. But when I teach them, anak, every single cent galing sa pawis yan. Hindi tayo nagnakaw. Minsan, tayo na nga ang tagilit, that's okay. Minsan tayo ang dinaya, that's okay. But we will stick to our principles. That's not an inheritance. That's a legacy. If I tell my kids, anak, pag nakikita mo ito dito sa bahay, there's joy and peace and love and trust. There's care for each other. That's not an inheritance. That's a legacy. And if I tell my kids, this business, I'm going to leave behind. They are business built on the foundation of giving more than what you're paid for, giving service to your clients, not shortchanging them, not cheating your suppliers, and being faithful to those who have contributed to it. That's not an inheritance. That's a legacy, isn't it? Now watch this. This is the tricky part. Your accomplishments, my accomplishments, all the properties and all the excellent performance that we have had, When we pass it over to them, that's only an inheritance. But the only thing that parents can leave their kids is their character, one that is based on loving God and loving neighbors. That's not an inheritance anymore. That's what we leave, a legacy. And I hope that everything that you will learn from here, from Pastor Peter and every other sharer, will leave you with tools, not to leave an inheritance, but to leave a... Maraming salamat. Thank you.